the Baha'is.
Sorry.
I'm Aaron Crater, and I'm working with Brand Star Magazine, which is sponsored by the Baha'is of the United States. So this is a magazine for children ages approximately 7 to 12, but we have adults that sneak in and get subscriptions, but that's fine. But yeah, it's very engaged in different learning styles. So we want there to be lots of ways to understand Revelation and the content of spiritual and religious ideas. So the main goals of the magazine is to try to educate children on a oneness of humanity, and that all religions are one, basically. So it's really trying to set down world citizens, really, and trying to get an education development for that next generation of children to grow up being, in a sense, global citizens. So those are the goals of the magazine, and we're just really proud members of RCC for a number of years now. And this year, we got the award for the cover illustration, which I was part of, but really is a team effort. Our whole staff is involved in everything that we do. So I think I answered all the questions. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you. Brian, how about you?
Sure. I'm Brian Kaler, and I'm editor at Word and Way, and we're a Christian publication that's been around since 1896, based in Missouri. And I've been involved with RCC for several years, even prior to being at Word and Way, which I took on this role in December of 2016. The specific project that we were awarded for, Aaron got his up, so then I had to go grab mine real quick before we got started on the recording here. So the specific project was Unsettling Advent, which is a kind of a pop-up email newsletter. This was actually our third year that we had done this newsletter. It started in 2021 as we were getting close to Advent season and wondering, well, should we do an Advent devotional, which we have done for our readers sometimes in the past, so it had been a few years. And we honestly on the staff weren't feeling like we were up for Advent. And so we decided to lean into that and recruited writers to do a series on Advent for these unsettled times, as also a way of kind of unsettling the happy, cheery image. And so we basically took the news of the year and thought about, well, what does this teach us about today and the original biblical stories that we generally celebrate during Advent? So that first year, we for instance, considered Advent in a time of death, with COVID was raging, Advent in a time of racial injustices, so both back 2,000 years ago and today, and Advent in a time of insurrection, because it was the first Advent after January 6th. And it was intended to be a one-off. And then the next year, we started getting readers asking us, are you doing this again? So we thought, okay, we'll do another Unsettling Advent. And so we have done it now 3 years. And I think it's been a category winner all 3 years, and a best of class last year, the last two times. And so in 2023, our Unsettling Advent categories was considering, just blanking now on what we actually did. We've done so many topics, they start to run together. But we were looking at
don't worry, it's okay.
Yeah,
don't
we
worry.
looked at some bad. We took the bad.
It was a winner.
Oh, we had bloodshed in Israel. That was one. We had some Palestinian writers that joined us with Gaza, and we looked at the death penalty in a time of executions, and so just kind of taking those kind of topics and thinking about leaning into basically the worst news of the year and trying to have devotionals reflecting on those.
Great, thank you, Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kristen Opalinsky. Oh, that's all right. I work for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, actually as a manager for ecumenical and interreligious relations. So that's kind of the primary role I carry into the work, but had the opportunity to work on a really special project connected with the Lutheran World Federation. And that was envisioning and developing the logo and the branding based on the theme for last year's Lutheran World Federation assembly, which was held in Krakow, Poland. The LWF assembly is held once every 7 years, and so it is a huge deal in that it is the largest Lutheran gathering in the world every 7 years. And so a lot of time and effort goes into envisioning the theme itself and then building upon that theme through visuals and branding. And when the theme was decided, which was in 2019, of course, we were not yet into the pandemic and didn't know what was coming. And so the theme, One Body, One Spirit, One Hope, emerged in 2019. And it was actually in 2020 that I began working on the project of taking that theme 6 months into the pandemic, taking that theme and trying to create visuals that would really, you know, at the time, of course, we were designing for this project, not even knowing if we would physically gather in Poland, or would it be, you know, once we got to 2023, would it be, you know, still a digital gathering? And so really leaning into what we were hoping for, which was an assembly that would be together, physically connected, that would be full of life and energy. And so that really drove the design process. I'm a Polish American, third generation Polish American. And so I had the unique opportunity. This was a very personal project in that I was able to tap into a lot of my heritage and thinking about the artwork that my grandmother, for instance, had in her kitchen when I was growing up. Artwork called wycinaki, which are these very intricate paper cuts that reflect nature and life. And so this was kind of my expression of a modern expression of wycinaki in the perspective of this assembly last year. And just one final point about the project. We developed also a flower image that is very emblematic of wycinaki. And that artwork is not just in Poland, but it is a regional artwork. So it is in Ukraine, it is in Hungary. It stretches across many different areas within the region. And of course, that symbolism of a regional expression became very important because of the war that was ongoing in Ukraine during the assembly. And so trying to find those visual elements that could tie the whole region together in a time of really disunity and not knowing what was coming next. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you. Thanks. And Brad, will you share a little?
My name is Brad Pomerantz. I work at Jewish Life Television, which is a basic cable television network that is broadcast around the country as well as in Canada. And I am honored to host our global travel series. And what we do on the show Air, Land, and Sea is we travel to countries around the world and we tell the history of the Jewish community, both historically and then modern day. The episode for which we were honored this year was on Turkey and specifically Istanbul. And our goal for Air, Land, and Sea generally is to make the series as accessible to anyone of any faith that may be watching, because we have plenty of viewers that watch JLTV that are not Jewish. In fact, 80% of our audience is not Jewish, but that's a whole other conversation we can get into at some point. What made this episode particularly special for me is that, you know, so many of us who may know people who are Jewish will look back at their roots in Poland, Kristen, because, you know, 80% of us have roots in Poland. But the reality is that 500 years ago, most of the Jewish community was centered on the Iberian Peninsula in Spain and Portugal. And with the advent of the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions in the late 1400s, early 1500s, significant numbers of Jews fled to, we'll call them Ottoman lands, what is now Turkey. And in something that was very inspiring for me is that the Sultan of Turkey in 1496-7 literally sent an armada of ships to the Spanish coast and picked up 150,000 Jews and brought them to the Ottoman Empire. That's a lot of people for today. Imagine how many people that is in 1497-8. And so the Jewish history in Istanbul and throughout Turkey is really thriving. And while I will say that relations between Turkey and Israel is a country that happens to be Jewish, but are rocky right now. While I was there, I found it to be an incredibly inviting and welcoming place. And the Turkish people couldn't be kinder and more pleased with the revitalization of their Jewish history and institutions. And so I am and will continue to be a big fan of Turkey and the Jewish history that is there.
Thank you, Brad, for sharing. So I have some questions for our panelists, but please, if something bubbles up in your mind that you want to ask anyone, just put it in the chat and we'll cycle back to that. So first, I'd like to start us off by talking a little bit about the creativity. Is there, and Brad, you and Kristen both shared a little bit, but is there anything in particular that inspired you to take this angle with it or to do this particular project? What about the creativity behind it? Anyone like to share about that?
I don't mind jumping in just because I was just talking and it's on our listeners' minds. Television is a visual medium. And as a result, having two people talk is boring. But what you can do is have two people talk and show imagery behind the interviews. And fortunately for us, there is so much to see visually in Istanbul. And the judges were very kind in saying that they very much appreciated the creative choices that we made, which is using visuals, the term of art in television is B-roll, to tell the story. It's enough of, saying me, Brad Pomerantz, yada, yada, yada. You gotta, tell the story with imagery. And so, I'm sure that's the same in print. All of you will talk about that. I'm sure that words are great, but if you can use pictures to help tell the story, it's only of benefit. So those of you that are interested in seeking awards for television, I just urge you to really focus on telling story through pictures.
Yeah, I believe last year you guys did a program on the Jewish experience in Japan during World War II. Am I thinking of?
We absolutely did do a program on a province called Gifu. And there is an individual, he's known as the Chinese Schindler from Schindler's List. He was a Chinese diplomat that saved tens of thousands of Jews in Lithuania, and we did a program about him and his home province of Gifu. So yes.
That was a phenomenal show, and it really was sticky because I remembered a lot of it long after. It told a lot of people.
Means the world to me. That means the world to us. Thank you.
So just to mirror back that, yeah, the storytelling, the visuals, production, everything about it, head to toe, was just relatable to anybody and everybody. And what I loved about it too was there was entry points for people of all backgrounds,
right?
To show like our common humanity, and that just was really touching. So that was an A+. I got to be a judge on that one, and I was so
You're very
happy.
kind. You're very kind.
Very good. But just to double up on this like inspirations element, a lot of where I get inspiration is from given themes in Revelation. So in the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah is written most of the scripture for the Baha'i faith, and it's an incredible amount. Like I heard somewhere there's over 76,000 tablets that he wrote, and only 11% of which have been translated into English. So, and you see any Baha'i's library and it's just full of books already. So that is incredible amount of inspiration you can get. And a lot of it draws from images in nature. So when we go through a theme, we often circle back to it for kids and cover some element of it. So we'll come back to racial equality or race unity. We'll come back to certain themes of the oneness of religion, and then we'll interface with it in a different way. But we'll often use some of the images that Baha'u'llah gave us. So for this issue, which was about gender equality, which funny enough, we hadn't tackled in 25 years. So we usually circle back quicker. We had a real reservoir of things that we wanted to cover and say. So one of the main images Baha'u'llah uses is that humanity is like a bird that has two wings. And up till now, only one wing has been strong and it can't really fly. And that wing is just the dominance of the male side of things. But the women need to be empowered and strengthened and given equality so that the bird of humanity, has two wings and can really soar. And so we chose that for our cover image. And obviously we could have kind of gotten photographs or something really realistic, but it wouldn't have then spoke to the metaphor. So we wanted to draw fantastical birds or these kind of oversized, magical looking birds that kids, a male and a female, a boy and a girl, are riding on each wing, to just show that kind of exhilaration that can happen, when you're in flight and everything's going great and stuff. So, and then just showing a lot of different kinds of birds with different colors. So implying that it doesn't have to look one way, it may be expressed different ways in different cultures. But those inspirations often for us come right out of scripture, whether it's, of all the religions, so we really have a vast mine to tap when it comes to how to get inspired.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and just to kind of jump on some of those themes, every LWF assembly, it takes place in a specific place, and so the theme, the contextual richness of the culture, the local culture, and the local artwork, and always plays a role in how that identity is developed. And so the last assembly before this one was held in Windhoek, Namibia, and it was held at a time that was encompassing the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. And so coming out of that time in Southern Africa and moving into this time back close to where the Reformation was born, and thinking through those connections of a Lutheran tradition that came out of Germany, what is now Germany, but spread throughout the world and kind of returned back to Europe at this moment of great tension within Europe. And what does that mean for us as a global communion, as we kind of return to the roots of where the Reformation first started, and really wrestle with some of the larger questions of identity from a global Lutheran perspective. And so the design, as we really dove into kind of imagining it, we wanted it to yes, reflect the local culture, and that's why the theme of Vichinaki came to the forefront, but also wasn't so specified visually that it detracted from kind of a more global connection. And what I mean by that is the logo itself, with the dove and the two people kind of growing out from this branch of hope, united in Christ and growing outward, contained symbols that could be immediately received no matter where our members were coming from around the world. And so that was really important. Yes, it was a nod to the local artwork and cultural traditions, but it was truly a modern representation of it, and wasn't so kind of contained within that tradition that it didn't kind of move out into something else. And so I know that that was something that we talked a lot about as I developed the imagery, that it needed to be translated or translatable. And so one of the things that was a real joy in the process was developing the logo in 5 different languages. And so because LWF has 4 primary languages, English, German, French, and Spanish, but then also we developed the imagery, of course, for Poland. And then the Lutheran Church in Hungary said, hey, we would love a version of this as well. And so we just kind of rolled with it. And that, so behind me is one of the posters, which won one of the Best in Class awards this year.
Will you actually bring it up?
Yeah, sure,
yeah, I'd love
sure,
to see it. Yeah.
but it's the Spanish version.
It's okay.
Which is kind of, yeah, which
Oh, that's great.
and so
Oh,
you
that's
can
great,
kind of
yeah.
see, clearer the visuals
Yeah.
here that I was explaining. But it was just such a joy to work on it in a project that was so globally expansive. Really, I've never worked on something that had all of those kind of all-encompassing elements before. And so it was a real joy to tap into the local spirit, but then think through what will this look like in a global representation.
Beautiful.
It sounds like that was both an inspiration, but in some ways a challenge, right? And I guess to our panelists, what were some of the challenges, obstacles that you faced as you went through this project? And then the second part of that question, what did you learn from doing it? What, as you go through, like, what was the learning, the lessons to be gained?
I'll jump in on this first, because in many ways our inspiration was immediately also a challenge, and that is that we take the worst news of the year and then try to have thoughtful devotional reflections on that, and that has been a very unique challenge. And I think one of the lessons from that has been particularly important to recognize is there's something to be said for uniqueness and also for authenticity, right? I mean, we as human beings, we are all struggling and wrestling with the dark spaces in our own lives and what we see in the news. And there can be this temptation to just put on our happy face. And I think that as religious communicators, we need to be telling the full scope of the stories. And then a second part of the challenge for us has been the voices. We try to bring in a good variety of voices for each of the weeks on the topics of trying to figure out, who can help offer this perspective, who can help us think about it. So with executions, we had a number of chaplains that have been inside the death chambers because of the recent Supreme Court decision. That was one of the reasons why we had this as our topic last year, and actually have been inside the death chambers holding and praying for someone as they're being executed, and they were reflecting in their devotionals on that. Or with the week on thinking about the violence in Israel and Gaza, of having Palestinian Christians writing about their experiences, both since October 7th and before. And so finding those voices is a multiple month project of identifying them, encouraging them to write, getting them to actually turn stuff in, and the whole process. And the last thing, even though we're very much a more written based than not as visual focused as some of the other projects we're hearing about, the visual is a very important part of it. And so every devotion we have a news photo, and that is some weeks is much more of a challenge than others. So trying to find a contemporary news photo to pair with the devotional reflection, but it's a part that I spend lots of time going through looking for the photo to match, but it's something that I think adds another element to that. And, so for instance, with Gaza, I wrote a devotional on thinking about the Holy Family in Gaza and where they would have traveled through Gaza, actually on the plight to Egypt. That would have been the route that they would have been, and then found a photo of a contemporary photo from last November, as Israel was dropping bombs on Gaza, a woman holding a baby and sitting in the rubble there in Gaza. And so that was a contemporary photo to pair with the reflection on the biblical text.
Anyone else want to share your challenges and what you learned from?
One thing I would say, and I admit that I'm also now talking as the coordinator of the Wilburs, which is the outside organizations that obtain honors. What I have noticed, both being a DeRose participant and a Wilbur Awards coordinator, is that, and everyone that's talked today has made it clear, and they may not even realize it, but what they are describing are pieces which are accessible to everyone, whether you are Lutheran or Baha'i or Jewish, that to the extent that you are submitting work for awards consideration, I love how Kristen's shaking her head, it's so critical that you appreciate that someone who's reading or watching may not be Lutheran or Jewish or Muslim or whatever faith. And so you want to make your submissions super relatable, accessible to people of all faiths. You can generally presume that the judges will be at some level familiar with faiths, but not even necessarily. And I think part of the reason why, and I'll just talk about our success on the Turkey episode, what the judges said is that we appreciate that we could follow the story, even if we didn't have the deep history. And so I would urge everyone, when you are thinking of what to submit, try not to submit anything that's too inside baseball. That if you don't know enough about Baha'u'llah, you want to be careful that, you're not submitting something that someone who doesn't know enough about, a specific element of the Baha'i faith will get lost. But it just sounds like what everyone submitted just happened to be very accessible.
Thanks, Brad. Brian,
I think Brian wanted, yeah.
Yeah, you got your hand up, Brian?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up on what Brad was just saying. And, I'm pretty familiar with the entries, especially the best of class, because as I go through the program creation process, I get to see them intimately and kind of pick out, I take Brad's video and I say, which selection or that are we going to show at the program? Or I take Aaron's cover and scroll through the cover and I get to see the birds and I get to see the people and I get to see the religious motivation and message that underlies what I would call like attractive, aesthetic, beautiful, and cute even pictures, to be fun for kids. Or I look at Kristen's work and I'm just like, I sat and stared at it literally like for like a minute and a half. And then I see Brian's work and it's, the series is called Unsettling Advent for a reason. It's quite unsettling. And I think, okay, I'm doing a presentation, a program. I want it to be uplifting. And I got to do quotes about the death penalty and people, petitioning the governor's office. And so from what Brad was just saying, it's interesting to me that all of the work that comes out of the RCC, it comes from our religious and faith backgrounds and perspectives, but it's speaking to elements of humanity that need to change, need to be uplifted, need to have some light shown on them, whatever it is, from our own unique viewpoints. And that's the thing that I get year after year is just how much shared interest we all have in doing good and doing the right thing. And sometimes we don't even maybe agree on what the right thing is, but we're trying to do the right thing. And I think that comes through really loud and clear in all of these entries. So I would say that just enter your best work. And another thing is I try to have judges who are from outside of the organization to review these. We have a lot of our own members. You have all scored DeRose entries, so you get to see each other's work and see what people are entering. But I try to have outside judges as well, so that number one, we can get some feedback from our peers in communication who are not necessarily doing communications for religions. And number two, it actually kind of spreads our work a little bit further and makes those communications experts in real estate or public relations or whatever they're doing, commercial activities. It makes them aware, oh yeah, there's this whole field, there's a whole subset of public relations and communicators who are doing specific religious work, and kind of exposes them. You know, some of our judges would have never even heard of or been familiar, at least, with some of the faith denominations that are shown and entered, or would have never taken the time to read a Baha'i publication or a Scientology publication or a Muslim publication. And there they are, we're kind of throwing it in their face and saying, read this. And not only that, think about it. So as future viewers hopefully watch this episode today that we're recording right now, I hope they would draw inspiration from those of you who are speaking and entering to know that this is a bigger deal than just us. I mean, it's a big deal for us, but it's a bigger deal than just for us. So I don't know, I rambled a little bit there, but I get very excited about this topic. So I'll be quiet and turn it back over to Tim.
You raise a good point. Thank you, Brian. So anyone else want to share about what you learned from the project?
Yeah, I would. This dovetails into what Brian was just talking about. I feel like, and it's a good lesson or a good thing to consider, which I know everyone that's won an award here has already thought deeply about this, stays up at night thinking about these elements. But that is like how much my audience needs to know and how much I can trust them to figure out on their own the deeper elements of any topic or subject. And I think for the topic we were dealing with, which was gender equality specifically, there's a lot of other gender elements that have emerged in popular culture that would be easy to jump in and editorialize on. And we had to resist doing such things and really just kind of look to, the various scriptures and faiths and what's been said about various elements, equip children with underlying principles, and then empower and trust them to make their own decisions and trust based on what exists in Revelation. So in that way, I just feel like I learned a lot about not trying to quote unquote make someone think or believe something, but just sharing the beautiful scriptures that we all have access to, and then adorning those or creating activities or ways to explore those elements, and then having it be a very active process where the viewer gets to sit and think about these elements. And I think that's what makes and when people are thinking about the things they want to submit or what they're working on, really think about how much people sit with what you've made afterwards, and kind of maybe it affects or modifies their life because there was some place or some gap in there where they got to think about, wow, how could I be inspiring like that? Or maybe how can I bring a devotion to my community around these difficult events that need healing, or just anything that you see in these winners of these categories. I feel like they're all capable of moving people deeply because of the space they allow those, the viewer to be involved in that element. So that was just some learning I had this year.
Great,
And
thank you.
something that really stood out for me, the opportunity to go to Louisville this year and to spend time just in the presence of these amazing creatives, that have, all of us have poured so much passion and energy and intentional thought into this work, and to be able to share space both here today, but also around a table, for instance, or the banquet table I was seated at, just receiving the stories of everyone around that table that evening, and the work that went into each of these projects, was as much a part of the process of submission as anything else. I mean, yes, submitting the work and being, excited to be connected to this larger kind of network of creatives and artists and communicators, but then to really, be in the midst of the work with each other, to hold that community, was really, really special. And it was Brian and I had a chance after the banquet to chat briefly, and we reflected on the heaviness and the weight of the evening. So much of what was lifted up came from places that were very challenging, were dark, were had a sense of rawness to it, and yet being in that shared space provided an opportunity to hold it together collectively, and it was just a really, really unique experience. And so I encourage anyone who's thinking about submitting their work to think about that part of it as well, that you in doing so will have the opportunity to hold space with so many other amazing and passionate creative people who are working to put good energy out into the world, no matter what our faith tradition is, to be a part of that together.
Amen. Preach, sister.
That's the end of my sermon. No.
Well, and the idea of the richness of telling the story. It's not just, get the story out, push it out. It's also the intention behind it. And I think that is what was evident to me as I looked at the best of class, is there was so much backgrounding and thinking and depth to it. So I thank you all for that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just really want to convey to the RCC in general, and I'm sure the other participants probably share some of this too, is our whole staff really looks forward, win or lose, every year, the feedback of the judges. Right. And really the only way to make more effective media is to really engage other professionals in review and, impartial review. And so getting that feedback is just golden. You can't pay enough for something like that. And so, it's a luxury to have it within your staff. If you have a highly experienced veteran staff like we have, we're able to, like when we said the challenges of any piece, the biggest challenge of this piece was our own staff. Like for me to get a piece of art through our staff, you guys, you had no idea how much that takes. It's incredible. But then when it gets through, then I know that this passed through a lot of different types of vectors of professionalism, educators, scientists, artists, designers. There's a lot of vectors that we really think about our pieces through, so that it engages the whole child from whatever interest they have. But then to put it out to RCC and to the other precious faith members with all their experience and background, no matter what discipline they come from, it's even richer. And we rush to that opportunity every year. So I just wanted to point that out as a highly valuable piece for people considering whether they want their inclusion in this. It's not so much about winning or losing. It's really that critical feedback. It's very valuable.
Yeah, I will say that for both the DeRose and the Wilburs, it's a huge selling point, actually. I mean, we market the fact that you get judges' comments and the folks are so incredibly appreciative of it. I really don't know of any other organization, faith-based or otherwise, that offers awards and gives you judges' feedback. I think it's hugely beneficial, Aaron, and I appreciate you throwing that out, because we love it. We love getting the feedback.
So you've gotten some wonderful feedback. You've gotten an award, best of class. How do you celebrate it? What do you do now? Do you leverage that either internally or externally? What do you do with the accolades?
I'll jump in. I mean, I might as well. We leverage it very significantly. I mean, Brian and Jenny have seen, I think, but we have our graphics department create a poster that we put on social media, that we send in our e-blast, and then we also send it out to all the tourism boards throughout the country, throughout the world as a marketing tool, because we work with tourism boards to do episodes of our series. And look, I mean, I don't want to be cynical, but the reality is accolades and kudos are beneficial. You know, we don't do it for that, but they definitely create a buzz around projects, both internally and externally. And we do leverage it as much as we can.
That's right.
I'll put it in the chat, actually. I'll put some of it in the chat if anyone's interested.
And Brian, as he was talking, I saw you shaking your head. Do you care to?
Yeah, I mean, we immediately will, let our readers know about any awards that we've won as a way of kind of reassuring them that we're worth reading. Right? In case they were on the fence, or particularly subscribers, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. I always highlight it in a donor appeal at one point in the year of here's the awards we won. This is a team effort, and you are part of the team, and that we literally could not create this, award-winning journalism without you. And that, as Brad was just saying, we don't do it for the awards, but then the awards are really nice in helping us continue to, keep the support that we need to run the organization. And so, yeah, it's a really strong, important point of affirmation, both for us internally, kind of encouragement, but then also in helping us to continue to move forward.
Yeah, for the Baha'is and the Baha'i faith, every year, every dollar is analyzed whether they're going to spend that dollar that way again. So we really literally justify our existence every year. And I mean, it's brutal, but it's important to keep an organization flexible, right? So because in the Baha'i faith, interfaith activity is held in such high regard for an interfaith organization, the largest, one in the oldest in the U.S. that is dealing in communications, to offer awards periodically to the Baha'i Faith and Brilliant Star means that shows up in our annual report every year, just from that element. But also then to our subscribers, of course, like everyone was saying, we put it on social, we put it on our subscription page. It has our RCC, award wins in there, because everybody holds those, holds value like this, like Brian was saying. It's like, oh, okay, you guys are good, I guess I'll re-up my subscription. But it's important to get neutral, evaluation from outside yourself and relevance. So yeah, it is celebrated, and it is, and our national organization will often send out an article in the national magazine about the award winners. So, every Baha'i in the U.S. gets to hear and read about the activities of the RCC. And so it's huge.
Yeah, one of the biggest joys of this process has been seeing how winning these awards has kind of reinvigorated the energy that we held in September in Poland last year. That there's been this, the office in Geneva picked up on the story and wrote a beautiful article, lifting up me as the artist, but kind of reconnecting with the energy that was the assembly last year. And so it was kind of this kind of reinvigoration that I wasn't particularly anticipating, and yet there was just a lot of joy and celebration around the imagery that was developed and the fact that it was being honored in this really unique and exciting way. And I think because the LWF assembly only happens once every 7 years, that there is this kind of it was a unique opportunity to really celebrate again, just 9 months after. And so both the local church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church here in the US, but that larger global communion that exists in 99 countries and had representation in that space in Poland from all those countries, and 150 member churches are now able to kind of celebrate this as well. And so, yeah, it was something I wasn't anticipating, but really just a joy to be able to celebrate this again alongside our global communion.
Great, thank you. Aaron, earlier you talked a little bit about judging, and I know you served as a judge in the past. And for any of our panelists, anything that you want to share about that, both, from being a judge or from the opposite of what you receive from the judging notes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for those, worried that maybe if you're feeling a little tender about your creation and you're going to enter it and it, gets shredded or something, that's not what the goal is. The goal is to point out the elements that are functioning and working. So you always get the positive feedback of what have I done that's working in this piece? And then there's always some gentle suggestions on things that could be focused on. And obviously time, money, all these things become a factor. So it's not a judgment of the creator, but, if the staff or if the creator gets a chance to expand on one element, here's an idea, here's some things that could, in the experience of the judges, which the judges have often had, lots of experience in media, here's some things that you can try. And so you get really powerful notes back on maybe you've plateaued, you don't know where to expand your project or where to expand your media efforts. Here's a lot of professionals that have had a lot of experience that are really lovingly walking you through how that can happen. So, and honestly, to be able to judge is just such an honor, because I don't think I've seen a single piece that I didn't get something out of, and yeah, there's different levels of budgets, different levels of resources. That's fine. But still, everybody's got some, because of the themes we're dealing with, these are celestial themes, and these are the angels on earth trying to make this planet better. And from that spiritual realm and through their faith and their religion. So you kind of leave judging on another planet. I mean, I just leave after I've seen all those pieces. I try to do them all at once. It's overwhelming, but it's because I just want to wave after wave of positivity, because so much of what is in mass media right now is the problem and not really the solution. Even if they say they're offering the solution, these are solutions that are intuitively you just feel ugly about, because they're not really deep solutions. And I think faith-based solutions are really something. There's a lot there to look into our history and to look at our present and to see how faith-based solutions really transform circumstances. And that's what everyone's dealing with. So to be able to be a judge is awesome. To be able to, get judges' feedback is awesome. So I don't know. I kind of going round and round because I'm at a loss for words. Maybe someone else can jump in what I'm missing, but it's electrifying. It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I both learned from the feedback that I get from judges, as well as learn as being a judge, and see so many incredible works that, as Brian was talking about earlier, I mean, I get exposed to publications and media that I wouldn't otherwise have been read or, paid attention to. And so it's not just that I'm seeing quality ideas, but I'm also seeing it from other groups. And I find that to be a really interesting, exciting process. And I mean, I judged one of the other panelists on the session this year, and I was really excited to see that they won. So I'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah, it's a bit like that overview effect where astronauts get to go into space and see the planet without barriers and divisions as one. I feel like being able to judge is like that. You back up and see that our faith connections are really from the 10,000-mile point of view is just, it's one seamless, the virtues, the values, the golden rule. There's all these elements that are just seamlessly interconnecting us, and that overview effect is sort of awesome. It has an awesomeness that you walk away feeling very connected to humanity.
And if I can give a shameless plug, forgive me, as the Wilbur Awards coordinator, which honors outside or entities that are not faith-based, I will just say one thing. This year, one of the honorees was a producer from 60 Minutes. She's been there 12 years, and she said to me, "This is the award I've always wanted." I was literally stunned when she said that. So the shameless plug is, if you see something that you believe is Wilbur worthy, which is simply a non-faith-based organization that is doing something that shines a light on faith, email me, email Ginny, email Brian, email the RCC, and let us know. And then we can invite them to participate. Because while the Wilburs are well known, as are the DeRose, the more we get out, the better. And so just keep your eyes and ears out for secular media that's engaging in faith-based storytelling. It's to the benefit of RCC and all of us.
Perfect, Brad. We have our DeRose-Hinkhouse Awards Coordinator, Memorial Awards Coordinator. Brian, would you share anything that you want to add before we close out with our panelists one last time?
It's exciting to me to see everybody here. It's good to meet. Kristen was a new member last fall and then swept the awards. And, Brian, you've been a mainstay with us. Aaron, if I ever think of something that I want to communicate to children, you're the man who could do it, And of course, Brad, we work very closely. I mean, I've known all of you for a long time, except Darcy's a new friend I have never met. But the DeRose Awards, they're so meaningful. I don't think it's just to me. I think it's actually before I was the coordinator, when I was first, a green new RCC person, going to my first convention, like Kristen mentioned, and just kind of being in awe of all these great artists and writers and editors and, Brilliant Star. Every year I would see them, right? When I'm like, I need to know more about this magazine, And so to be able to work with you all as judges, as entrants, just as co-conspirators in the game of life, it's an honor and a privilege, and I look forward to doing it a lot more.
Thank you, panelists. I saw several of you put a link to your work. Brad, you were not able to. So if you would drop, Brad, your email in there so folks who want to get it can, for some reason, it is not letting us share PNG files. Gotta love technology, right? And panelists, thank you and congratulations. Well done, and keep up the good work. Would anyone like to have any final closing comments?
Just thank you so much for welcoming us into the space today to chat more about the work and to continue to share the excitement together. And hopefully it's those of you watching that this has inspired you to participate in the future.
Enter early and often.
There you go. Thank you, everyone. Be well, and we'll have this posted soon on our website. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny, for doing this. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jenny. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.